So this panel has been put together based on a previous panel that I was on at Rocky Mountain, and it dealt with the idea of increasing diversity at shows so that when you go to a show, it's not always the same 10,000 older white guys walking around. And I'm an older white guy. I'm the oldest guy up on the panel, so I'm not really sure why I'm on this panel. But this is my wife, Carol, and we're both managing editors of the online publication Positive Feedback. And we've been doing audio and shows for
a long time.
Since before they were born. But for ourselves, we tend to be very inclusive. We're retired public school teachers, did that, so we love inclusive, help me out with the language here. Inclusion. We love diversity. We see that, there is people always saying, oh, the industry's dying, we need more young people, we need what we can do, this and that. I'm like, I don't really think it's dying. I just think there's a transition. So we have a panel today, but the goal is not just for us to talk and say what we think is going on in the industry and what can be done, but we want to hear what you have to say. And so this is going to be a lot of not us up here lecturing and sharing ideas, but wanting to hear from other people who say, hey, I don't really care if there's more people at the show. It just makes it harder for me to listen. I don't want younger people there because they're going to play crappy music. And the struggle that Carol and I face is that we're not the typical audiophile when it comes to music. We don't listen to classical, we don't listen to jazz, we don't listen to classic rock, we listen to, I listen to a lot of noise, true noise. I go to drone festivals, I'm into a lot of obscure stuff, but it's all impeccably recorded and well done. We both kind of went through the whole punk scene and did all that, and so a lot of our roots are still in that. So with that in mind, I'd like to have the panel introduce themselves.
Good.
However you want to do it.
Is this one on?
Yeah.
Okay. I am Nick Mandera. I am the content manager for Emotiva Audio Corporation.
My name is Cynthia Bishop. I'm a freelancer. I've done a few videos on Steve Guttenberg's channel, and I'm mainly coming from the consumer standpoint.
My name is Sam Willett, and I have HiFi audio experience with Cambridge Audio and Classic Album Sundays, which is a worldwide album listening event. I've hosted them at Rocky Mountain Audio Fest and here at AXPONA, and then I've also been a music journalist for Consequence of Sound and a few other music blogs.
My name is Bevan Merbach.
Let's try this one.
My name is Bevan Merbach, and I'm with ZMF Headphones. I am a co-founder, and we are a headphone manufacturer.
Oh, well, I'm Carol Clark. He already introduced me. I'm managing editor at Positive Feedback. And I don't know, I guess we can discuss ideas of how we think we can get diversity, and then we really wanted to open it up to the audience to hear what you think.
So, I'd like, up here, some people to share, since this is a younger group, issues, concerns, how they're marketing, if it's a marketing issue, if it's a manufacturing issue, if it's like, gee, we need to stop making big black boxes, let's make small, colorful, more ergonomically simpler things that would, less expensive. Things you see as an exhibitor, things that you might face, and then let the audience jump in.
Okay.
Anyone?
All right, no, I was thinking about it. Yeah, I think the next generation, probably the biggest device that we all have, of course, is this right here. So that, to me, is kind of a key component to the next generation of audiophile or any entertainment or content watcher or listener. So I don't necessarily think it's less big black boxes. It could be more affordable gear. I think that's definitely a big part. Easier to use gear is another part of that. As well as, I don't know, I mean, it's a broad range because a lot of us, I think, we've grown up with the traditional kind of audiophile thing, but now we're kind of forging our own path. Whether it's headphones or people listening to home theater gear, it's a wide range. And I mean, this is a point in our lives where everybody's lives where we've had access to the most content at any given time right now. So whether it's music from 50 years ago or music from 5 minutes ago, it's all at our fingertips. So it's wide open.
So I think the main question is, how are we going to get young people into high-end audio? As a consumer, I can say that people my age, I'm 23 years old, a lot of people my age, they don't have a lot of money. So they're just getting out of college, they got their bachelor's degree, now they're either in student debt or their parents paid for their college, but they lack the interest. So if they're in student debt, then most likely they're not going to be able to afford the high-end audio components. And most of the components out there are pretty expensive. Now, there are some affordable components, but that's a big challenge that I see. Also, with listening from your cell phone, the convenience of that has caused a lot of people to go more towards portable devices, which when you're listening from your cell phone or computer, you're going to lose a lot of that music that you would hear in a regular 2-channel audiophile system. I think a lot of that has to do with convenience and with the music being readily available, and you can get a lot of music for free and a lot online nowadays.
So I got a few perspectives just to piggyback off convenience. So I think something that maybe a lot of people can relate to in here is, I guess, maybe picking at the specifics of equipment, like the type of power or maybe the technology that's inside. Gotta tell you that a lot of millennials don't really care about that stuff. Because we don't have a lot of money, any technology that is beyond like what is, I guess, tangible, like immediately tangible, this doesn't really like jog the mind or jog any interest. Not to mention with an iPhone, most of those are packed with, regular Apple earbuds. For a lot of people, that's enough. They're not going to think beyond that. And then AirPods, which are, and also these Google Assistants, which are offering immediate convenience, they sound good enough to people to the point where they're not going to think beyond for hi-fi audio. And I'm actually a direct, result of this. With Classic Album Sundays, I touched $100,000 systems with, turntables with like weird levitating platters and almost like $2,000 needles. And, there's a part of me that doesn't think that I think that the value stops at a certain point because I do have a limited budget. And I know that, I previously worked for Cambridge Audio. A lot of people here see Cambridge Audio as a lower end or like budget brand, and in the grand scheme of things it is, but they also aim to deliver the same hi-fi, satisfying experience, and they do it very, very well at such a lower price point. And that really has to be the spin on it, and then also spinning it to modern devices with social media. My previous job with Cambridge Audio involved organizing their social media pages, and with vibrant content and the right type of messaging, you can grasp the right ears, especially smartphone users who are shopping addicts and want to click something. So if you appeal to the right audience and have the right resources, you can change the game. But you have to think about how a millennial audience, I think, has a very limited interest in what previous hi-fi aficionados have appreciated in the past.
I think I have a bit of a different perspective on this because our company is definitely high-end audio, and we do attract kind of a millennial base for our price point. But what I really see from our customers is, with a focus on the environment and owning items in your home, minimalism, things that you really love that you're willing to invest in instead of just a bunch of things that are going to become disposable. Owning a headphone that you're not going to give to the Goodwill in 2 years really means something, I think, to our customers. We make handmade, wooden, crafted headphones. So we've actually attracted this millennial crowd that is really invested in owning something that's heirloom, owning something that they've learned about and put their money in. And I think one of the spaces that's really helpful is the online community to millennials learning about high-end audio. Because I kind of think it's like doing your own oil change. Like if you were brought up in a family where your dad took you out to the car and opened the hood and showed you how to do an oil change, then great, you can do an oil change and it makes sense to you. But if you weren't brought up in a family like that, you go to Jiffy Lube because you're like, I'm not gonna touch that, I'll just, take it there. And I think audio is really the same way, where there's this sort of familial or a close friend who kind of shepherds you in and lets you know the ins and outs of it. But I really think that the online space is an important place where people, a diverse and inclusive audience has the chance to interact and get a feel for, the tradition of audio that is kind of a sacred thing that I think that we're lucky to pass on to younger generations and to get them involved and to teach them the value. That's, how our company has operated and tried to bring in the younger generation who maybe didn't have that experience of a parent or a close friend teaching them the ins and outs.
A couple of, after kind of hearing everybody else's, a couple of things that stand out. I heard the term good enough a few times. That seems to have become the kind of the approval for everybody, kind of not necessarily just younger age people, but anyone coming to the financial point. The good enough is very important to people that go, 90%, I can spend a little bit of money to get 90% of the sound. The extra 10% is where it gets real expensive real fast. So the good enough, whether it's a sound bar or whatever, they go, okay, it sounds louder, so that must be a better sound. So I think an educational point from high-end audio is missing for a younger audience. The other thing is Emotiva started out as a direct-to-consumer through online for the high-end market. So reaching the younger team or the younger group of people online is a big point. So the traditional dealer is very different for younger people. You go, you mean I actually have to go somewhere and sit down or make an appointment to listen to high-end audio gear? They're not going to do that. They want to get online and just buy something. And the other thing is they want to feel like they can spend their money on something that's worth it, something with value. A lot of products are, kind of cheaper, plasticky products, but if they open something and it feels expensive, it feels like there's a lot of value there, I think you've connected with that audience, and they're going to feel like the money that they did spend was really worth it.
Yeah, if you have anything, just grab a mic.
Okay.
This is a free-for-all.
So
There's no plan, yeah.
So Nick and Bevan both brought up good points. They mentioned that it's an education process. It's a mentorship. So what I'm not seeing a lot of people mentoring the younger people. I know that I got started because I had an older friend mentor me. He had Magnapan 3.3s, Emotiva amplifiers, Jolita preamp, and he got me into it by playing something that I wanted to hear. And when I heard that song, it just amazed me and it enthralled me into the music, and that's how I became hooked. And I think that's a big part of it, is the mentorship. But I'm not seeing a lot of older people doing that. I see a lot of people that could be my parents' age or grandparents' age at these shows. I don't see younger people going to these shows. So if it were your show, how would you do it differently? Or why are we not mentoring these young people? Do any of you have answers for that?
If anybody wants to jump up, we can give you a mic, and I can come down there. And
we'll say some stuff later.
Should I just stay in the crowd or? All right. Let me just blow up my own head. Hey, I'm Everett. I'm a consultant right now here with Deconi Audio. We do earpads. I also help Sennheiser with their social media. I've heard definitely a lot of things that I've been considering a lot. Is definitely great to be hearing talked about. The idea of mentorship and community from Bevan, and the price point being super important, and we're feeling like, hey, what is the best price to performance? That's a question I see in my social listening job, reading HiFi, reading Master Ops. They're saying, what is going to be giving me the most performance for my dollar? Because they think, well, this is as good as it's going to get. I've got streaming. I'm going to be listening on the go. I'm not going to have that amazing experience. I don't even know how good it could be. So as you were saying, like, who's going to mentor these people around my parents' age? One thing I've learned listening to and directly asking people is most people have a person who get into audio. Like, I'd love to hear your story of how you got into audio. Usually there's a family member, a father or a mother, usually a father though, audio daddy, who is like, hey, this is my whole life experience building up a really great system, so this is as good as it can sound. Like, this is a really high-end thing. Give people that taste of a really high performance experience. So then your bar has suddenly been reset a lot higher. And you're saying, okay, so that is possible. Holy cow, like, this is amazing. And it gives them a hunger, which, you know, you want to be appropriate about it, you know, but okay, so you want to teach people, and that's going to be super valuable, and we want to build these communities that are forming and being able to interact on a level much higher than ever before. But we need shows like this. So a component that kind of goes in with all the socializing we've got online and shows like AXPONA, CanJam, is that now people can hear and demo these things. I would love to hear what you think is the main pain point to saying like, hey, get people to come into these shows just so that they can demo them. Unlike we can't do it as much online, we can't do it as much in brick and mortar stores because they're struggling. One of the things I'd love to hear your story about is how you got to demo things, learn about the components, because when you can demonstrate that value, the why, everything else becomes a little bit easier to, okay, here's the path you can take. So which, I would love to hear that.
I mean, so years back, Carol and I actually started yeah, you're fine. We started the Greater South Bay Audiophile Society, which has now become the Los Angeles Audio Society, which is, quote unquote, the largest audio society in the world. Excuse me. But I think things that we could do is simply have music nights at your house, invite a great diversity of people over, neighbors and you know, not just strangers coming in, you know, but, you know, have, you know, fun nights and bring whatever you want. I think, you know, the marketing aspect is where do most younger people today listen and find their music? Does anybody know the answer to that? YouTube. YouTube trumps everything. Our son, who's 30, has a nice audio system in his room. Obviously, he has ours and ours. Buys a ton of vinyl. Excuse me. But he discovers tons of stuff on YouTube. And he comes home all the time. Oh, I got this. And, you know, he does it at work and he's not supposed to. But I think, you know, the marketing aspect of, like, advertising on YouTube, where you already have people. Mm-hmm. And there's the audience. And the sad reality is we all know you're not going to get everybody. There's people who don't really care about sound. They love music, but this sounds good enough. And you know, it doesn't matter age, it doesn't matter who they are. There's people who just simply, this is fine. I don't really care. But sometimes when you bring them into your house and they sit down like, wow, this is great, but how much does this cost? Oh, shit, you know. And then, but you can do something cheaper. There's ELAC, there's, you know, you guys make less expensive products. You know, there's a lot of stuff you can get in the door. And maybe that's just good enough, and that's okay.
Actually, I'll chime in on that. So I have a lot of experience with the whole community record night thing. So like when I was a junior in college, my buddies and I started doing this thing called Record Night, where we would get together and listen to albums in their entirety on a record system, and it really did make our entire friend group more into records. It really accelerated my purchasing rate, and made me add up like none other. And then when I thought that the Record Night concept was something more important than something I did with my friends, I started the Classic Album Sunday Chicago chapter. I guess you can call it the chapter, but it was that event. The Classic Album Sunday is hosted in Chicago, and it was founded in London, New York, and it's all over the States and all over Europe. I hosted that for 2 years, and every month there was a different album. And at the end of the day, the interest was in the artist that was being focused on at that event. So I hosted a Radiohead event. There was about 85 to 90 people in Saturday Audio Exchange. If you guys have been there, it's on Belmont and Sheffield and Lakeview in the city. And people were sitting on the windowsill. And then I hosted an event on Exile on Main Street by the Rolling Stones, and there was like 10 people. And then it was just so fluctuated. And by the time people had attended the event once and really gotten that flavor for hi-fi, it's either a 10% stuck and got a system, and then 90% said, that was a cool experience, I experienced it once, I don't need that in my house. Especially if they are listening to Apple products, or I think the other big competition is, ourselves. People buy so many systems at secondhand shops, and a lot of it is great. You could go back in time and listen to so many innovative products, and they still sound good today. And so many people are just gonna always buy at secondhand places. So how can major brands develop new products that compete with secondhand shop appeal is another huge question that I don't think has an answer yet.
So in terms of technology, from what I'm seeing, I'm kind of in the technology sales world. It's a little bit neutral right now. There's companies that are making $600,000 pairs of speakers, and there's companies that are making a $200 DAC that you can plug into your phone with a $20 adapter and actually get a decent sound quality. So I don't think the problem is really that all the equipment is too expensive and that there's not enough inexpensive. You mentioned ELAC, right? Andrew Jones went from the $80,000 a pair Concentros that launched like late 2016, and then a year and a half later he launched the debut 2.0s that are $300 for a pair of speakers that will destroy most sub $1,000 pair of bookshelves, right? I think part of the challenge right now, as somebody who comes from a musical background and who produces music, there's sort of this trend right now in music that's called compression. I don't mean it in the sense of like an MP3 file, but from a musician's perspective, artists and recording engineers are doing things, are utilizing a technique called compression, where you take a waveform that's like this and you squash it and you stretch it so that all of the frequencies are filled all the time and everything is even, and you get rid of a lot of this dynamism that we're all used to in music going back. And that can kind of challenge getting somebody into a decent level of audio quality, because it doesn't matter if you have no dynamics. It doesn't sound that much different on iTunes and a pair of earbuds than it does on a $20,000 system, because so I think part of the challenge is making sure that, like when I demo a system, and I've got somebody who's 25 years old, I don't put on Led Zeppelin, right? It's unless they tell me that's their love. I've got to find something that's modern and that is appealing and that is hot on YouTube and it is doing those things, that still has enough music, dynamics in it to make that demo when I can A/B junk versus good, and so they can hear the difference and actually care, because it's something they can both connect to and that also has enough musical dynamics in it to make a difference. But there's a lot of stuff that's popular on the radio and on YouTube right now that there's not that much difference from system to system.
Anybody want to jump in? I mean, obviously the quality of music, but I also think something we have to look at is if someone loves something, I don't really care if I like it or not. It's their music. This is what moves them. we've been in too many rooms where it's like, can you play this? And they're like, no. I'm like, but this is your audience. This is someone who may buy something from you someday, and they don't want to hear Diana Krall. You know, they don't want to hear Keith Don't Go, because that's usually when we go, right?
Well, that's really true. You're competing for time. You're competing for the eyeball and the earball, if you want to call that. So there's too much time compression. People are spending time with too many things. There's too many inputs. So they get the video input, they get the audio input. And I think that is a major thing. Budget isn't that, I don't think budget is as big of a problem as we think it is. And the gentleman that just walked out of here, Steve Gutenberg, he had a little system that he recommended about a year, which was $88 for an amplifier and a pair of speakers. And so this stuff is there, but it's not accessible. Your record store days, all that kind of stuff, that accessibility is extremely important. Experience is what they're missing. How many people go to the concert? Where do they hear their music from? I mean, I listen to a lot of stuff on these. They work great. They don't sound good, but they work great. So I think it's a time competition as well as an experience, missing the experience. How do we get them the experience? And I think to me, that's one of the biggest problems, is getting that experience of a real live sound and exposing folks to it.
Comments?
I would just say, I think that's really important, making those experiences happen. And as a headphone company, we've looked at that and thought, you know, we can't put the onus out there on somebody else. We kind of have to take the impetus ourselves. And can we create an event? Can we get to know our local community? How do we find every forum that's out there on the internet and say, hey, do you have a question? Do you want to come to our workshop and sit and listen, and we'll make you a coffee? So I think it can be this sort of diffuse thing, like, well, who's gonna plan the event? Who's gonna do this, that, or the other? But at the end of the day, it's up to those of us in the industry to be the ones to take the reins and provide the experience and provide a venue for getting together or hearing music, or otherwise, I mean, it does sort of dissipate. People in general, I think it's human nature not to be like, oh, let me be really on top of things and schedule this and get lots of people to come, or get something like that together. But you know, there are tons of us who are connected to audio, and just like you were, you know, had a record day, you know, get something going, schedule an event, and get people involved.
Yeah, I have to agree with Bevan on that. So the demographic is old, and it's slowly it's dying off, but when it does, what are we going to do? It's a big concern among manufacturers, and right now with dealers want to make a fast sale because what's going to sell right now? But the manufacturers are concerned about what's going to happen in the long run. I know that with Sam, the Classic Listening Sundays, basically what that is you go in and you listen to vinyl record, and he's able to get young people into audio that way. So in a sense, vinyl is a gateway drug. You get them in and you get them listening to the vinyl, and they love it, and then they're hooked. And it's a lot different than listening to digital. So with vinyl, it's kind of like a Japanese tea ritual in a way. You have to go and you have to pull out the jacket, you look at the album cover and the liner notes, you put the vinyl on the turntable, put the stylus on the groove. It's almost like, in comparison, driving a standard rather than an automatic. You're really getting into your music. You're one with your music that way. So when you drive a standard car, it really feels like you're driving that car as opposed to driving an automatic. And so that really engages the person that's listening.
Yeah, so just to piggyback off the vinyl thing, I love vinyl so much. And it's the main reason why I developed a personal passion to do Classic Album Sundays. It was not affiliated with any brand for myself. I just thought that it was a worthwhile thing to get people together and listen to records, and I would tell a story before we listen to each album to to provide some context about, you know, how it was recorded, you know, the meaning of some of the lyrics, and, you know, just really get people some proper context so they can find some of these things themselves. They can have those like aha moments. You know, I'll be like, oh, hey, like listen to this instrument at this timestamp, or, you know, and people would hear that, and I would basically say, be pointing out, this is what the HiFi is doing, you know, so people would hear it and they would say like, oh, it gave me shivers down my spine. No, I like haven't heard it like that since I was a kid. But that missing step to them committing to a HiFi system is another story. And I really think marketing is all there. And oh crap, I was going to say something else too, and I just lost it. Oh well.
Hey,
oh
guys.
yeah, actually, sorry, I have one last thing. I organized Classic Album Sundays for 2 years, and I put every single blood, sweat, and tear into it. And it was a full-time job outside of work. And if you want to organize those events, you have to hire someone. They have to promote it in every single possible way, and put up posters and post on Facebook and literally do every single thing possible, because when you do every single thing possible, sometimes you will still have 5 people. So you have to do it repetitively until it works. And so if you think it might be a good idea once, it might work once, and it might not work the second time, or not work once, it might work the second time, you know, or vice versa. That's what I meant to say.
So I have a bit of a comment and then a question for the panel. So my comment is generally, this is my first time at AXPONA, and I'm a younger guy, I like to think. And I think the challenge for any big brand is, how do you achieve cut-through with a generation that's so busy, that has so much stuff going on, that has access to so much more information than at any other point in time? I think that's a huge question that, you know, not just, you know, audio brands, but really any big brand has to really understand, is how do you connect with these people? One of the things that I've found is that our generation, like millennials, you know, like you were saying, as far as, you know, we don't value the number of possessions we have. We value the interaction and relationship that we have to the things we own. And we want to see ourselves, and we want our things to be a reflection of ourselves. And that's, I think, a huge thing for younger people. And my question for you guys is, how do audio brands, audio platforms, content manufacturers, record labels, how do you build products that people like me can see ourselves in, that can be a reflection of ourselves? What does a product like that look like to you?
It's kind of challenging because, I mean, music and interest is completely subjective based on individual. So something that you might enjoy, somebody else might not enjoy. So you kind of have to create a broad range of products. Emotiva, for example, like we have preamps, amplifiers. We kind of make the end-to-end solution for all users to find whatever they need to get them into the brand. That's the most important thing. A lot of people, that when they come into a brand, if they have a good experience the first time, they're pretty good to come back and buy more from you. Especially in the audio world, loyalty is pretty important to people. So usually, yeah, once you start with, you'll kind of continue that on. It's interesting that that you kind of bring up the millennial thing. The one thing that interests me too is the generation beneath the millennial. Is they seem to be the more scatterbrained. How do we get their interest as well? We've brought up social media up here. Social media is a huge tool to us, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, because a lot of people go to those looking for reviews on products. Reviews are kind of the lifeblood of this for any manufacturer. So we, for example, have started doing a lot more YouTube reviews because these personalities draw a ton of reach. So you get a product reviewed by somebody that's an extra 40,000 people that subscribe to that personality that might not know about your company. So social media is a huge key in this.
Yeah, I guess I'm speaking for the older generation. I don't know if you noticed or not, but I guess there's a lot of talk here about marketing and how to make things appealing. High-end audio and all that. I can talk like from my own experience. One thing that hasn't been mentioned is the music. So this thing about spending money, I spent a lot of money on audio. I go back from the early days and I didn't have the money because it was a priority. Music was my passion. It wasn't a pastime. I wasn't walking around with earbuds while I was running. I literally, when I'd get records and I had my system, I literally would listen for 6 hours straight to music and different things, and I was exposing myself to the whole world of music. So this was part of my life. And then, high-end audio, when you hear it on a system where that little bit of this and comes through, it changes everything. This music that I would hear that was just like noise in the background, when I heard it on a high-end audio system, it was a whole completely different experience. And so it's almost like a drug. An audiophile is a person that loves audio. It's almost like a drug. So then you find yourself with that little tingle here and a little thing here and all that. That's where you put your, and you think about it all day, and that, but it all comes back to the music. And that's kind of the point I want to make. Nobody taught me this. Nobody, like you mentioned about having exposure to that. I had no exposure to high-end audio. What I had was a passion for music. I wanted to play guitar. I'm doing this. I didn't do as well as I wanted to. I go, this isn't going to be the way I can do it. And I found listening to this music here and with this system, it will bring that concert to my home that sounded, and a lot of times sounded better than going to the concert because you can control that environment. So I would literally have this concert. It's like having a big theater at home instead of going to the theater. I would be able to bring these people to my home. Even today, I heard Joan Baez's version of Brothers in Arms, Dire Straits' Brothers in Arms. I've never heard that song before, her sing it, whatever. And I haven't had a really high-end audio system in a while. I've been out of it, so I kind of trying to get back into it. And hearing her sing, that was my jewel of the day. Hearing that voice, her singing it, and all that, the texturing of her voice and the reality and just the imaging and everything. That's to me is what makes you do all that stuff. You're going to spend that money because it's important. So, and you're kind of there, you're not, So, but, that's kind of what I got.
I mean, I think that's an interesting point. Luckily for everyone involved at the show and here, the commonality is the content. Everyone who listens or watches is going to have an emotional reaction. So we will always have that on our side. So there'll always be a generation that wants to be involved more with what they love. So that's at least the easy part of it for a lot of us.
You also just react to your own content. Like I feel like in hi-fi discussions, music never comes up because music is so multifaceted. Music is a headphone listening experience, it's a group listening experience, it's a Bluetooth speaker listening experience, and there's a vinyl listening experience, and hi-fi is just a sliver of the pie. And, I feel like for a lot of people, the only reason hi-fi is going to work is if you hear a song that you like and you see what you notice. There isn't one song that everyone has a clicking moment to, like not even the Star Spangled Banner. So, I feel like I worked at an audio company, and you'd be surprised how many people, they liked working in music, but personally, did they listen to that much music? No. That's just like, that was their passion for work. But, I really just think that hi-fi is a sliver of the pie, and most of the time hi-fi companies are trying to figure out how to have their consumers connect with their content, with their equipment, so they can't really talk about it's kind of hard to talk about music unless you're talking about the music that your customers will like.
Okay. I will have a question not about finding next generation, is finding the other gender. I'm from Canada. I think we have 16 genders you can choose from on a form. But anyway, I was just wondering, for the industry, what you would do for attracting female consumers, because divorce rate is going higher, and the single-family household now outnumbered couples. Actually, we are single people probably is the majority now, not the couples anymore. What the industry will do to attract audio for her?
I have very strong feelings about this. I really dislike the idea that to attract females, we have to make pink headphones with ears on them and fur and things like that. No judgment, but I think women also want a great audio experience. And I think what it comes down to is sort of gender socialization when we're young. Like dad sometimes takes brother in to look at the hi-fi system, and mom brings sister into the kitchen, and we sort of grow up with these socializations just into different things. And I'm not sure that that's, there's been a lot of progress, obviously, but I'm not sure that that's totally eradicated. But for women, I think just giving that space, if you have a partner who's a woman, and you see her, attending to a task, tap her on the shoulder, say like, go sit in my chair, put those headphones on, and find a song that you love. I think just welcoming women into that space. That's how I was not an audiophile, and I still can't totally classify myself. I don't have all the knowledge to be an audiophile yet, but I'm learning a lot. And it came from my husband continuously putting headphones on my head until I couldn't deny that the headphones that he was putting on my head were much better than the headphones I was putting on my head, as just a matter of convenience to listen to music as I was attending to some task that needed completion. So I think, males in the space can be welcoming to females, and I think the jargon of the audiophile world is a little difficult for everyone, but it's also, it can be intimidating, and helping someone understand who may not feel represented in this space already, to understand those terms and to show them that it's not scary and that they can, hook up a system themselves by just plugging a 1/4-inch jack in and plopping headphones on their head. I think that that's where it starts, is just, I speak again to mentorship, but really, I think that this is a space where you shepherd people in because you know that it's awesome and you want to pass on the secret, that, hey, it can sound good on those, but listen over here, it can sound really good.
So Bevan, your husband mentored you, and he had to keep putting headphones on you until you got it. So when did you finally have that breakthrough, and was it listening to a specific song that you liked? What caused that to happen?
I don't know. I think when I reflect on when you get a good pair of headphones on your head, I think you just sort of fall into this space where all of a sudden you're back on iTunes and you're searching a song that you liked when you were 13, a song that you loved when you were 17. You want to go through every song that has ever been meaningful in your life and hear it, and you're not even really conscious that you're still listening to these headphones. You're just wrapped up in this experience. So I think it was just times like that where I fell into the sort of wormhole of searching out my favorite songs, that I came to realize that it was a different experience.
So do you think it's a lot of multitasking while you're listening to headphones rather than people sitting down and just enjoying the music?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a difference between intentional listening and listening to make the mundane tasks of life less painful, if you're doing your taxes and have an earbud in, you're not necessarily fully taking in the music. You're this kind of is awful, and thank you, Modest Mouse, so.
Yeah, and as women, we get busy, there's kids to take care of and different things, and just lots of things that women have to do to keep up the household, and so they get distracted, and then they don't really have the time or the interest to actually listen to high-end audio. So if they have a husband, then the husband should try to play some music that the woman actually wants to hear, see if you can get her into the music, and you might even make an audio file out of her by doing that.
What about single women?
Single women's a different story, because I'm a single woman and I'm an audiophile. Now, again, it goes back to mentorship, because I actually had a friend that got me into it. Otherwise, I would have had no idea that the word audiophile even existed. But I think that all goes out to reaching out to young people and to women in different aspects. So, but what do you think about that?
Can I give you another but? What happens if there's not a male mentor involved? What should single women do to get interested in hi-fi audio just themselves?
I'm going to say that on the microphone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, what should single women with no men around do to be interested in hi-fi audio? No men.
So how would they know to even become interested in it if they don't even know what it is? Do they know what it is already?
I think, I think there's a passionate music fan, and you would like for them to be enlightened to listen to their music better. What are some other great avenues, I guess, outside of maybe an event or a mentor that they could take in.
Yeah, I think it depends because, so I heard this story about this guy who has a wife who is a gearhead before they even met. So she started out as a musician, and as she got into her instrument and mastering that, she started getting into the musical realm and finding out what she can actually reproduce those musical instruments on. And that's how she got into it. And that's just one factor. But what about someone who's not a musician? I see there's some ladies in the audience. Like, do you have any answers?
We do have a question.
Okay.
It's a different topic, sort of.
We'll get back to that. That's at the bar.
Okay, we'll circle back to it.
That's a good one.
No problem. You mentioned about mentoring and things of that nature. Excuse me. I recall a time with my father, and he had a good sound system, and we were listening to music, and it's a totally different time now. It's really no comparison to back then, because back then you had the HiFi receiver wars going on with Pioneer and the Sonys, and everyone's trying to top the next one to 100 watts to 200 to 300 or so, and the price difference wasn't as big as it is right now. And one of the big differences too is that you have so many different audio shops, and he can take me to those audio shops and we can hear those different manufacturing and the different components put together and hearing that music. You just don't have that now. I mean, you got Best Buy, that's about your brick and mortar that you're going to go, unless you're going to go 30 miles into the city, onto a smaller shop here or there, that you may or may not have somebody that's got the knowledge of the components or even have the equipment to put it together again. So I think it's a little bit, as far as trying to compare it to back then to now, you really can't do that because the times are different. I mean, it's just, you don't have the commercials with the guy sitting in the seat with JVC blowing him, air through his hair and stuff like that. Or Maxell, correct. But I think it was a JVC on JBL speaker as well. I mean, so it's just a totally different marketing and different time. So, I don't exactly have the answer to that, but I can say coming from back then, I've got my son, I bring him to my, my listening room, and, he loves the sound, but he can't take it with him. It's all about the portability now. It's just, this generation is all about portability, and just that's kind of where it is.
Carol has a comment here.
Well, if anyone wants to respond to this first, go ahead, and then I'll circle back.
I think that's probably the biggest challenge as a manufacturer is those traditional avenues don't exist anymore. To let people trial, do a trial of the product before they know. But with a lot of the online manufacturers, most of them do in-home trials, and for the most part, that's where you're going to notice the difference anyway. So your room might sound great with one piece of gear versus another. So that's kind of, it's anything you buy online. It's a trial and error. Sometimes you can get stuff that works great and it's perfect for you, and other times you're not. But that's kind of the challenge you run into now.
Actually,
yeah, there was kind of a personal thing happening with a dealer, somebody that would come in and set it up for you versus you kind of having to go to YouTube and find out how RCA jacks plug in and how to use speaker wire, so something more traditional like that.
Yeah, you're right. It does seem to be more of a personal experience back then, because nowadays as a consumer you're having to go read through manuals, and especially as young people don't like to read manuals generally. I don't like to read manuals, but it was more of a personal experience if somebody can help set it up for you and talk you through it and tell you what works and what doesn't. But yeah, like he said, there's a lot of companies out there that offer home trials for different products, and a lot of affordable ones. I know Shit Audio had offered at one point, I believe it was a preamp, they offered for a 30-day home trial, and they have pretty affordable components. And Magnapan did something similar with the MMGs. Now they're doing it with the little ribbon speaker that they replaced their MMGs with, $650, 60-day home trials. So be on the lookout for stuff like that, different companies that make affordable products that you can try out. And if you don't like it, you can always return it and no harm done.
Actually, I just wanted to chime in on the last part of your comment. You said it, because it's not on the go, it's a little harder to make the sell, and I am that person too. So my favorite place to listen to music outside of my hi-fi system is with a great pair of headphones on a walk. Like, I'm a huge walker. I had a 21-mile walk day recently. It was awesome. My entire time I had my headphones on. And yeah, it's like it's a moving visualizer of all the stuff that's around you. And I just, like a lot of the time, if I'm sitting to listen to a record, I can maybe knock out one or two, and then I got to move around. This is my personality. So I sympathize with that, but I do think there are great companies that are making headphones that can plug into low-quality components and have a DAC. I have a pair of headphones like that now and really like them. So yeah, I agree with on-the-go being such a high priority, and Paul said it in his previous seminar that headphones are the biggest competition in music today, and I agree, but it's also an oversaturated market.
I was just going to say that while there may not be Best Buy and it may not be as accessible to try out lots of gear in this day and age, that I think that there's a little less risk in purchasing something, and if you want to end up selling it, the ability to resell gear online these days is all over the place. Every single headphone forum, eBay, you can buy and sell, and I think some people, including my husband, get really into just buying and selling and trading and just getting a feel for every single piece of gear that you can get your hands on. And it makes it much easier in this day and age with those forums versus like putting an ad in your local newspaper trying to sell an old receiver that people had to do back in the day. Today it's like you throw an ad up on 4 different sites, you can sell it to somebody half a world away because 1 million people are going to see your ad.
Yeah. Okay, I want to circle what we were talking about before. If a single woman wants to get into audio and there's no man to mentor her, why does it have to be a man? Why can't it be a female? Is this thing cutting in and out?
It can,
Yeah.
but there's so few women into the audiophile hobby. So it definitely can be done, but it's just rare.
It's just because I know some women who are audiophiles. I mean, I was mentored by my husband, but when I was growing up...
Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay. When I was growing up, every Sunday afternoon, my dad loved music, so he would play music for all of us. We didn't have any boys in the house. It was just my sister and me. But that was where I developed my love of music, and I had music I really liked, and then I met Dave, and he liked the same music, and I listened to it on his system and said, oh my God, this sounds so much better than the crummy stereo I have. But anyway.
And mine was the crummy stereo at the time. It was just, cheap receiver and some box speakers. I will say, though, that I was lucky because we got married, her first paycheck, she comes home. I'm like, what do you want to do, celebrate? She goes, no, I want to go buy a better audio system. What are we doing on Saturday? And that's a fact. And so we shopped. We ended up buying DCM time windows, an NAD 3140, an AR turntable, and that eventually became her long-lost speakers, Apogee caliper signatures that she wishes we still owned, but we don't. But, it's a different situation. And I think, I see men here with their wives and, girlfriends or whatever, and I think it's great. I think there's so much we can do just to accept differences of music, accept differences that people can't afford really good stuff, but it's okay because they love it and it works for them. We can't ridicule, that's your turntable, really? That Crossley thing? But they're spinning records, they're buying stuff. And that's a start. And from that, it's like, have you thought of U-turn? It's only $150, and then you can work your way in and get something better, and you can be okay at that. Maybe that's all there is.
I like that you kind of said that. One of my friends, he says the best turntable that you can have is the one that's already in your system. Whether it's a $1,000 turntable or a $100 turntable, because the end goal is the same, is to listen to stuff that you love. So getting the price element out of the gear, I think, is very important. I think an issue a lot of audiophiles have, they listen to gear, they don't listen to music. That's the biggest challenge. And I feel like with the younger generation, I think that's a big push is the music is the important part. We don't care really how we hear it or how it's being delivered, but the message that's coming through, whether it's the notes or the lyrics, that's kind of the part that hits us.
Could we send the women topic a little bit more? Like that girl, you raised your hand. You kind of brought it up earlier. Yeah, jean jacket.
Right.
Yeah. Did you have something to say about the woman thing? I just feel like we moved away from it, you know?
Yeah, I thought there was a few ladies that were going to say something.
Not necessarily have technical jargons. We don't have to know why it was a high frequency, this mid-range, this bass, blah, blah, blah. We don't want. We probably only want fine things. So audio is very fine things, actually. But they look very scary. They're heavy, big, and with a whole bunch of don't do. I think the industry needs to simplify for women. We want one big button, turn on, music play. And off, it's gone. So look pretty, and you can have as a part of a home setup conversation to as serve your lifestyle, not dominate your lifestyle. I don't want to be an audiophile. I think a woman not necessarily want to be an audiophile. We want to love fine things, delivering good music. And also on the other side, people say, where to audition? I wonder whether peer-to-peer model works, because in other industries it seems to work. I asked a few older people in the industry, men, I say, how did you get into audio? He said, when I was young, I get new records, I ask my girlfriends to come to my apartment, so one thing lead to other, now they have 3 children, 4 grandchildren. So it's something people share the interest, not necessarily have to be an audiophile, just share the music, and probably can bring new blood into the industry, and instead of not focusing on audiophile. I think this is a file thing, not a woman thing.
I feel like there are probably, I think Carol would disagree that there are women that are audiophiles. You know, there are women that find the finer details of hi-fi to be appealing. I think that the size argument you make is very fascinating. I think I mean, from women that I would know, like that would want to make a new system, maybe size could be a convenient thing if it wasn't something that was huge and massive like Magnapans. But yeah, I definitely think that there are women that want to be just as much of an audiophile as the top dude. So I really think that's a denser topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with anything is when you start making these like sweeping generalizations, but really what I think it comes down to is that people are diverse, and what this gentleman said earlier, like how do you create something that a person can hold and feels like it reflects them? And I think that's what it comes down to, whether you are any gender on the spectrum, you know, whoever you are, you want a product that you feel like you value and reflects you in some way. One of the ways that I think is important to sort of address this and that the industry has taken note of is just being able to customize things. So if you want a bigger unit, there's a bigger unit available. If you want one that's red, one that's yellow, one that's green. For the manufacturer, it's really hard because you have a million SKUs and so much inventory on hand, but really people want products that they feel reflect them, whoever they in their own individuality are, you know, be it man, be it woman, be it whatever. You know, we want things that fit into our lifestyle and represent us. And so it's our challenge to offer variety and to hear the needs.
I'll try to keep it pretty quick. I work in marketing for an audio company, so this is a very near and dear topic to my heart. And I got my wife into audio by just letting her watch Game of Thrones with my system, and she's like, I need to have this. I'm never going to watch it without it again. So it is about being inclusive and embracing, you know, what they're into and allowing them to be part of that world. As far as reaching women, broader audiences, younger. To me, it's about broadening the definition of what an audiophile is. It is not about just music. More kids now are playing video games than ever before, and that's an amazing audio experience. So the modern audiophile is really into all these different audio experiences, whether it's an action movie, whether it's a Diana Krall album, whether it's, Red Dead Redemption. All of those things make up what this modern audiophile is currently constituted as. And we, the brands, have to be the ones who are the mentors. There aren't this old world, people who are, here's my Sherwin Vegas, handed them down. That is dying off. We have to use targeting through social media. We have to create videos. We have to do stuff that creates aspiration, things that make you want this stuff. And it's not about, I love this man's description of how you feel music when you listen to it. That's hard to communicate to somebody unless they're actually listening to it. We have to be the ones to raise that bar and to actually create that aspiration for whether you're playing a video game or listening to music. And that's really what I'd love to hear, more about. I know it's the end of the panel now, but it's our challenge to do that.
Comments?
Yeah, I got one. So Cambridge Audio, I had a very fascinating experience with, blurring on mediums, it was a 2-channel audio, or is it home theater audio or personal audio? And, Cambridge Audio does blur all of those lines, but, recently they did dissolve their home theater lines. And, people will be like, why? Some people think there might be solid products. I haven't listened to the home theater products from Cambridge Audio, even though I worked there for like a year and a half. The technology moves so fast all the time in every industry. And if you make that product, and it doesn't meet standards, you're not going to appeal to any reviewers to review it if it doesn't have a necessary mark. And then once that mark's been surpassed, that product is now irrelevant, or it's irrelevant. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint the focus on so many industries, even though I agree with you that so many people for diversity in their products. So I think that that's an important thing to consider, is how can you get the best video game, movie, and audio experience within one system?
So we're at our time, 4 o'clock, and I want to thank everybody. I think it's 4, right? I think that's, okay. No, it's 4, but I think that's when we're supposed to stop. Yeah, we're over time. Oh, geez. So I want to thank everybody for coming. Hopefully, whatever this leads to something.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.